Okay, welcome everyone. If you're already watching, some people are already waiting for this broadcast to begin. Huge news, huge. Uh, I I am amazed that the jury's verdict came back this quickly. Let's just make sure that we are streaming, and we are. Let's see, the people that were here are gone. So, okay, hi everyone. I am your KevinlyFather, Kevin Williams, and we will be talking about Trump being found guilty of sexual assault today. Will it make a difference to anybody? I don't know. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Marcy. People are back in here. There were several people waiting, and then they were gone. So let me get to this page so I can see what I'm doing here. There we go. And I've got to make this. I'm at the Rusty Bed Studios right now up in Seattle, so I don't have my regular equipment. This is always ad hoc when we do this, and it's always fun. Huge news. Trump guilty of sexual assault and a couple of other things. Not found guilty of rape, doesn't matter. This is a civil trial. He wouldn't go to jail anyway, but he now owes E. Jean Carroll a couple of $1 million. And we can say, see, it would make a difference if you could say, oh, he's a convicted rapist. He's not. But he made some fundamental flaws in this trial. Well, thousands of fundamental flaws over the course of his life. Many absolute key fundamental flaws in this trial, including his downfall, I believe, being his narcissism, as it almost always is. So I was about to do a broadcast on just that, on how we know that Trump made the mistake of thinking that E. Jean Carroll, the woman he said, she's not my type, how he mistook her for his former wife. His own hubris is the answer. We might get into that later. I don't even know if we're going to have time. But anyway, welcome everybody. I am your KevinlyFather. This is the broadcast. Feel free to chat. YouTube seems to be the best in terms of getting it through quickly. Hi, Andy. Good to see you. Kimchi. Good to see you, Stephanie. Marcy. Excuse me. The type is very small for me. I need readers. These are readers. Trump does too. That's a foreshadow. Yeah, sexual assault also. Marcy, sexual assault is never an acceptable conviction. Shame on you. I know what you mean. Everyone knows what you mean. Let's get right into it. I just backtracked on Fox about 15 minutes. This is the actual announcement. I was all set to broadcast, and then I happened to look at the TV, and the TV said 3 p.m., which is noon Pacific time, jury has reached verdict. I'm like, what? That quickly? Guilty. And it hardly ever comes out when it's a case of, well, boy, I hope it could go either way. When the 9 jury members can decide in a matter of hours on a case that was this flawed in terms of the defense, then yeah. Will it make a difference to any of the mega base? No, none whatsoever. Will it make difference to the independent voters? Yeah, it will. Trump already lost the last election because of independent voters. Will it make a difference for the Electoral College? God, who knows? We live in such a screwed up country. Here we go.
Dressing room.
Here we go.
And now we're being told that the 9 jurors in this case, which is a civil case, a financial case, have come back with a verdict of no to the rape charge, yes to battery and abuse.
Oh, crap. What did I just do? Wow, way to spoil the headline.
Abuse and forcible touching. So they've come back, Andy, with a belief that, they believed her story.
Not only that, Martha, I think we can already conclude that probably the most important evidence in the case.
So yeah, the deposition would be the most important evidence in the case. And the testimony. Plus, honestly, the fact that she had a couple of friends who were able to give contemporaries affirmation of her side of the story, yeah, that's big. Now, of course, the right and Trump has already come out and said, oh yeah, well that's just, she's paying these friends, she's just doing this to get rich, etc. But you know what? It worked. She's going to get $2 million out of you, Mr. Trump. Okay, here we go.
Turns out to be the 2 are the women that Judge Lewis Kaplan allowed to testify.
Yeah, as he should have allowed to testify. But there you go, yeah.
Who claimed that they were sexually abused by Donald Trump.
Oh, okay. So he's talking about the two other women who claimed they were also abused by Donald Trump out of, I think it was 19 before the election. It was a big number. Now, remember, Trump claimed that he was going to sue all of those women. Each and every one of those women never did. Of course. Of course he didn't. But people believed it. The entire mega conference, the entire mega world is all about just you wait. Just you wait until the evidence comes out about Hillary and her crooked crime family. Just you wait. And right now we're sitting in a Hunter Biden. Just you wait. All right, fine. Convict Hunter. Fine. All right. I don't think anybody has a problem with that. Broke the law. Convict him. Joe Biden. Any evidence of Joe Biden doing? Oh, we've got it. Just you wait. Just you wait. Well, we've waited, and now Trump has been convicted of sexual assault.
Okay,
So
we have another verdict.
obviously,
We have another
it
one that we're going to
seems-
do. Andy, just stand by for
Hold
1
on.
second. Let's go to Brian Yennis. Brian, on the
Yes.
defamation charge, what can you tell us?
Martha, this jury has found that former President Trump did defame E. Jean Carroll. They have found him liable for defamation, and they say that he must pay $2 million to E. Jean Carroll for the battery charge. No word yet on how much they have allotted in terms of the defamation charge. And remember, this defamation charge was about those. They have the burden of proof for defamation was that it had to be clear and convincing that the statements made about E. Jean Carroll were not only false, but that they were done maliciously and out of hatred or ill will, spite, or recklessness. And they have
That's all Trump has.
found that he is liable for defamation, and they have said that former President Trump should pay E. Jean Carroll $2 million at least for the battery charge.
And more for the defamation. We'll wait to see how much that is. Excuse me. It may have been announced. It may have been announced already. We're about 15, 20 minutes behind here. I'm so happy. I'm happy to be at the Rusty Bed Studios. There's a story about Rusty actually making a rusty bed. Not my bed. Well, that's a story for another day. This is good times. Speaking on peeing on beds, let's get back to Trump.
Okay. So at least
Lady.
$2 million, Andy, is the verdict in the financial verdict in this case. We know the former
Oh, look, there's microphones set up. Someone's going to come talk. It's going to be, this is a great day. It's a great day for America.
president has already said that he will appeal this case. So how do you expect it to work from
Good.
here with regard to all of that?
Well, I think the appeal has been hurt by the verdict because what I think former President Trump would like to tell an appellate court is that the jury was steamrolled into this conclusion, but they're obviously very discriminating. The verdict makes sense in the sense that they acquitted, or they found him not liable, rather, on the rape charge. They found him guilty on the sexual abuse charges, the lesser ones. And the reason for that, I think,
is because we have recordings of him on tape saying that that's what he does over and over again because he's a star and he can get away with it. And he said that's the way it's been for 1 million years. That's what he said in his deposition, for 1 million years. Fortunately or unfortunately, it was actually unfortunately first and then fortunately for him that stars are able to do that they can get away with it. Do you think you're a star? Yeah, I'm a star.
That if you take the testimony of the 3 different women who testified in the trial, only E. Jean Carroll went so far as to say that an actual rape occurred.
Yeah, because the other 2 were in situations where rape would have been very difficult. But E. Jean Carroll came equipped with a dressing room. Not blaming E. Jean Carroll at all. But do I believe that she was raped by Trump? Absolutely. All of the evidence points to that as well. But it wasn't enough for the jury. It's different with the civil case. It doesn't have to be without with just the slightest bit of doubt. It's more is the preponderance of evidence. Is there more evidence that he did it than he didn't do it? Again, for this case, it doesn't really matter. It would be nice to say he was a convicted rapist. As of right now, he's not. But he is a convicted sex offender. So maybe, you know what? Someone should sue him and force him to stand 300 feet back from any woman at any of his rallies.
I think that may have been a bridge too far for the jury, and they decided that they would go at least as far as the other 2 victim witnesses described. and that seems to be what their verdict is. So they were obviously very carefully discriminating about what they believed or what they concluded ultimately happened in the way of sexual abuse.
Yeah. So we know that he did not testify. He is saying in a statement earlier today before the verdict, and we can bring Jonathan back in here on this one, that he would appeal on the basis of.
As Jonathan Turley, he's a constitutional lawyer with questionable interpretation a lot of the time. But he's been, I've watched a little bit of his talk about this trial, and I haven't paid as much attention to this trial as I probably should have, or again, all right.
Unconstitutional side.
Because he's not convicted in a criminal court, he's not subject to the regular sex offender rules where you can't be within so many feet of a school, etc., and you have to register with your block. So he doesn't fall into that category. This is more about monetary.
Silencing that he's a current political candidate and that he can't speak or respond while she can. But Jonathan,
he was able to testify. The judge, in fact, even allowed a certain number of days for his lawyers to say, yes, he will testify. He let that deadline come and go. So the judge went above and beyond what a judge normally will in terms of allowing the defendant to testify. Of course, he's able to testify. It's just nonsense. Again, more lies from Trump.
He was asked if he wanted to testify in person here, and he declined, correct?
Yeah, that dog won't hunt. If that's the argument on appeal, then it's going to be...
You know what, though? Dogs that don't hunt, awesome. They're still great. Unless they pee on your bed. That's not good. Right, Rusty? Rusty will hunt, but he's not supposed to because he would just hunt all day.
A rather quick appeal. There are other issues here that he might appeal on. Judge Kaplan was really quite yielding on the demands for witness testimony. He allowed in a lot of evidence, including the Hollywood Access tape and these other witnesses. Obviously, Trump had never been convicted or found guilty, either criminally or civilly, in those cases. So there was a lot of evidence here that the defense could say should not have been brought into the case or should have been.
Now, this also opens the door for any of the other 19 women or more who claim that they've been sexually assaulted by Donald Trump at some point. That door is now open for them as well. It depends on where it happened, etc. New York had a 1-year window that they opened back up. Why there's a statute of limitations on crimes like rape, I don't know. But New York opened up a 1-year window, and that allowed E. Jean Carroll to go through that window.
Handled differently. The problem for President Trump is that this is
Marcy's asking, will he show up for the town hall now with CNN, which is happening tomorrow, which I plan to be broadcasting unless Southwest strands me in Sacramento, I think I'm flying through this time. So I do plan to broadcast that tomorrow. And it'll be a one-time broadcast. You're going to have to show up for it live because it's CNN. And unfortunately, YouTube will give me a copyright strike for CNN if I don't delete it right away. So we'll be doing that and deleting it, even though I'm creating a new work of art, commentary, blah, 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 blah.
Mixed question of law and fact. There are some legal issues here, like the ones I mentioned about allowing in certain types of testimony. But when it comes to factual determinations, the Court of Appeals tends to be leery of overturning those. Jury decisions are really sort of iron.
Very leery. In civil court, really the only way to get an appeal court to overturn what happened, they don't try the case again. It's not like, oh, let's do it again. See what they just take a look at what happened. And if there was some sort of aberration of justice, if the judge decided not to let the witness speak for some reason or another, and it looked like, boy, that really swayed the jury, but that wasn't the case here. The judge was over generous in terms of allowing Trump to testify, and Trump declined. You're always entitled to speak on your own defense. It's never a good idea, for the most part, if you're guilty. Trump didn't.
Plated because you have to show that they were clearly erroneous. They're not going to be able to show that here with all this testimony. So the only
Nope.
way to really unravel this is to say that the jury heard things that they shouldn't have been allowed to hear because they were too prejudicial. The biggest problem for the president, I think, at trial, and it's going to be on appeal, is he decided not to testify. He didn't even appear in the courtroom. That not only triggered inferences, but it likely poisoned the well a bit for these jurors. Jurors don't like it. They don't like it in criminal or civil cases when the key accused party doesn't speak to them.
And that is compounded by the fact that Trump says things in weird ways. He likes to half-finish sentences and doesn't really get to then he moves on to the next sentence. And sometimes that can be very confusing for people who don't understand how Trump speaks. Several times during the deposition, especially one time where he seemed to admit that the rape happened, those can be clarified if the defendant testifies about what they meant in the deposition. A deposition is not the be-all and end-all. A deposition can be then corrected or amended or explained later in the trial. But without the defendant stepping forward, that doesn't happen. The prosecuting attorney is allowed to go with whatever's in that deposition.
Okay. So
I don't think it would have made a difference in this trial because he wasn't found guilty of rape.
do have some of the tape from the deposition that they did have the access to. The first one I want to play is call for number 2. This is the former president denying that this ever happened. And let's watch this and let's bring Andy back in and see how persuasive or not, apparently, this was for the jury. Watch this.
It didn't happen. And by the way, if it did happen, it would have been reported within minutes.
Should have just left it with it didn't happen. Because saying that it didn't happen, it would have been reported. Many rapes never get reported.
About going to a major floor, probably, I assume, the most important floor.
He's talking about the floor of the department store at Berghoff Gilman or whatever the hell it's called. It's a giant department store, very expensive department store in New York, and it takes up the entire block. So it's a huge floor. But he's from his retail days, I guess. He calls it the floor.
A major floor in a
I think he goes on here to talk about how it's got checkout counters, cashiers. Somebody would have seen me raping someone in a dressing room.
major department store. That's a very busy store, by the way. And checkout counters and everything else.
Checkout counters in a store.
And I would be in there. I mean,
Hey,
it's the
Gallen.
most ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous, disgusting story. It was just made up.
All right, so I want to play the other one.
Why the one thing? Of course, I would never do this. Leave it there. Don't go on about how the store has checkout counters and come on. Kevin said. Stephanie says, Kevin, can you show the truth? I don't know what the truth is. Are we talking about a tweet? What tweet are we talking about?
One too, because this was perhaps.
Or the truth tweet, this truth social thing? I don't know. Has he said anything yet? Should I jump on there? Oh, he did. He truthted. Okay, I see. Your guys is writing on the laptop because we're at the Rusty Bed Studio. It's very tiny, which is why I'm wearing one of my readers, which is something Trump should have done. That's another story. Hold on. Yeah, let's pull up the truth here. Okay, I haven't heard it called that before, but I guess. Here we go. Truth Social. TruthSocial.com. And is it going to make me log in and all that other nonsense, or can I just, for the love, I'm not going to create an account. I think it's on my Google. Give me a second. Okay, let's go here. This is the picture with Eugene Carroll. Oh, you guys can't see my cursor, or can you? Oh, very, very tiny. Hold on. Let's go to Truth Social, and it should come up. I should be logged in on here. It's loading, and here we go. If you want to find me on, I have absolutely no idea who this woman is. He does. This verdict is a disgrace, a continuation of the greatest witch hunt of all time. 9 jury members heard the evidence. He was given an opportunity to refute it and didn't. 9 jury members heard his very words and convicted him based upon that. But witch hunt. Okay, yeah. And again, it's not going to change anything. Let's go back to the YouTubes.
Perhaps, and these are anonymous jurors, but this other part of the deposition got a lot of attention when the former president was asked about something that he had said in the Access Hollywood tape way back when he was running in the 2016 race. That was hugely controversial moment. A lot of people thought he wouldn't survive this moment as a candidate. And because of the circumstances of what E. Jean Carroll described, this became part of this trial as well. And here is what he said when the attorney asked him whether or not he thought that stars could get away with the kind of battery that was accused in this case. Watch this.
Well, historically, that's true with stars.
It's true with stars that they can grab women by the...
Well, if you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but largely true.
Largely true.
Unfortunately or fortunately.
Unfortunately.
And you consider yourself to be a star.
Fortunately. I've been thinking about the unfortunately or fortunately. There's no situation where stars being able to grab women by the hoo-hoo is fortunate for anyone. That's not a thing. When the jury heard that, I mean, again, these are his own words. He's that stupid. Wow. For a million years. All the stars, remember Nandon, the caveman? By the way, human beings haven't even been around for a million years.
I think you could
We still have Neanderthals.
say that.
So, Andy, what do you think the impact was of these pieces of tape on this process?
Yeah.
Everything?
Martha, I think with something like that, I think the impact was devastating because of the way, not only what he said, but the way that they presented it. We've seen the Access Hollywood tape up till this point, mainly in the abstract. I think one of the most effective things that the Carroll lawyers did was to introduce the tape to the jury in the course of the testimony of Natasha Stoyanov, who was one of the women who claimed that she had been sexually assaulted by former President Trump. So it was not a situation where it could just be sort of dismissed as locker room banter in the abstract. They had a woman on the stand who was having a very difficult time getting through the story of what she said happened to her, who said she came forward because of the Access Hollywood tape. And then when they played the tape, it's the same things that she says happened to her.
All right, Jonathan, quick comment on those 2 pieces of tape from the deposition, and then we're going to bring in Ronna McDaniel.
Ronna McDaniel is the chair of the Republican Party. And I bet you she's going to come on and say, well, voters don't really care about this. It's all about inflation and the border. And but she might not say inflation because inflation is on its way down. It was always transitory. It always will be. It'll go back up again at some point in history.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
They're all about the border now. Border and crime.
Well, they are devastating. The first tape actually shows what Trump could have said on the stand. His point is a valid one. This was the worst possible place anyone could choose to commit battery in a very crowded area. And you can make that argument on the stand.
I would posit that one should never choose to commit battery, regardless of the number of people nearby. By the way, that's been covered. It was not a busy day at Goldstein Bergdorf.
But that deposition turned out to be a nightmare because he wasn't there, they were able to use those, and I think it really destroyed the defense in the end.
All right, Jonathan and Andy, thank you very much. Breaking news this afternoon, we have just reported the verdict in the E.G. Carroll rape case. He was not found to be liable, the former president, Donald Trump, in that rape question in this case, but he was found to be.
Again, libel, not guilty. Libel. It's not a criminal offense. It is a criminal offense, but you can't. Unfortunately, you can't try someone for rape that far after the fact.
Libel, and the payment needs
Goodolf Borgnon.
to be $2 million of battery, abuse, and forcible touching and
Good dog Bernard.
defamation. So that is where this has these 9 jurors, anonymous jurors in this case. That is the decision that they came down with just a short time ago. We're waiting for reaction from the former president, and when we get that, we will bring it to you as well. But first, let's bring in Ronna McDaniel.
She did say E.G. Carroll. That's a common thing. I do that too. It was E. Joe Carroll Cocky in the Boggy Dog store.
Who is chairwoman of the Republican Party. Ronna, good to have you here. Obviously, we invited you to talk about the 2024 race and a number of aspects of what's going on right now. But your reaction to this decision by this jury here in New York City with regard to the current lead in the Republican Party for the nomination?
Well, we haven't heard from President Trump yet, so I don't want to get ahead of him.
Oh, okay. So Trump might say, yeah, in fact, this is a great verdict. God bless America and the justice system. I will fully abide by the decide.
We have heard him prior to the verdict saying this is untrue. I imagine he'll say the same thing.
Yeah, I think your imagination is correct. I think Ronna McDaniel is correct on this. Good job, Ronna.
I do think the American people, though, are going to be focused on what's happening at our southern border, what's happening with inflation,
Oh, she's still going with inflation. Okay.
What's happening in their lives under the Biden administration.
Oh, maybe they'll be focused as well on abortion rights. How about that? How about on gun deaths? What about those? Those are also things that are happening. People focus on those.
And that's where I think the focus is going to continue to be for people looking at 2024 and ahead.
Right. So the follow-up question at this point, of course, is shouldn't some of the focus be on a candidate being held liable for sexual assault?
I just wonder what you think about, whether
About the candidate who's liable for sexual assault.
whether or not, because one of the areas that is very important, obviously, to electing the next president
is not sexually assaulting people.
going to be the women's vote in a lot of suburban areas, in Philadelphia,
Come on, you're almost there.
in Michigan, in Wisconsin. And some people have suggested that this trial,
Some people, not me.
coming on top of the hush money trial, may be a difficult hurdle for Donald Trump to get over electorally with those voters, with suburban women voters. What do you think about that, Ronna?
Well, I think we've got a long way until the primary process begins. We've got debates in
So people are just going to forget about the rape and the sexual assault. Okay.
August. As a suburban woman myself, I think a lot of women right now are looking at the Biden administration and saying our kids are still struggling in school.
That's what, as soon as the rape trial thing was announced, I was like, right, but kids are struggling in school.
Our kids are being used as pawns in TikTok as China is gathering their data.
Oh yeah, and that's what I wake up every morning sweating over that.
We had 70.
My kids' data is being stolen by China so that China can they take my child's data and they anyway, I'm outraged.
1,000 fentanyl deaths last year as Biden is not protecting our kids from that coming across our border. I think a lot of women are incredibly disappointed with the Biden administration, so they'll be looking at the Republican.
Why is she there? Why are you having her on the, you know what? You had her scheduled. I get that. This verdict has been announced. Okay, well, you know what? We're going to bump you. We got to concentrate on the actual thing that happened today.
Whoever that is, to put forward an opposing vision and one that's going to help suburban moms, suburban kids, and families across this country.
Obviously, the former president has been doing really well in the polling that we've seen. We saw the ABC polls that came out, and in those
it's like 40%
polls, it showed that here's the question. Let's put up number 7, guys. Should former President Trump faced criminal charges in investigations trying to overturn the 2020 presidential election results. 56% said yes, he should.
Oh, that's doing really well. I mean, I can't imagine doing better than that. 54% maybe. Is this really the slide that she wanted to put up there?
38% said no, he should not.
So that's super. That's great. 38%. That's more than half.
But then it's interesting because when asked should he, would they vote for him, by 18% they still said yes, they would go ahead and vote for him, even regardless of that. What did you think of those numbers, Rana?
I think it points to exactly what I've been saying, Martha. People vote based on what's happening in their lives, and we have investigated.
They vote for him, by 18% they still said yes, they would go ahead and vote for him, even regardless of that. What did you think of those numbers?
Okay, so less than 1 in 5, fewer than 1 in 5. Okay, yeah, all right. But should he be investigated? Yes. The question should be if he was found guilty.
Rana.
I think it points to exactly what I've been saying, Martha. People vote based on what's happening in their lives, and we have investigations and all these things that have been happening around President Trump since before he was even the president. It started when he was a candidate. This has been going on for 5-6 years now. I think people want closure, they want to move on, and they want to talk about what's happening in their lives. Why is gas so high? Why are we abandoning energy independence? Why is our border being overrun, especially with what we're seeing this week with abandoning Title 42? Why are we seeing crime rising in our streets? Why are we?
Well, crime is on its way down, actually. But yeah, the crime is an issue that needs to be addressed, of course. It's very bad. That's my opinion. I know I'm walking out on a limb there, but I think crime is bad and criminals should be in jail. Back to President Trump, I guess, which is really the same thing. She said something before that too, but I've totally forgotten now.
Seeing a president of the United States and Joe Biden refusing to negotiate with Republicans on a default. Why did we see 3 banks fail?
Because you don't negotiate on the paying the debt ceiling, or raising the debt ceiling. That's you negotiate on the budget. The budget has already been submitted back in February by Biden. Here's what I would like. Now the House has to look at that and submit their proposal for a budget. They pass the budget. That's what the House does. You don't negotiate the debt ceiling at the same time. That's not part of the same process. There are processes for both of these things.
Since March under this presidency. So I think a lot of Americans want the focus to come back to them and the issues that matter.
Right, but what we're talking about today, as you can see on the screen there with the microphones and the former president and the Carroll, is the rape thing.
In their lives, and they don't want to continue to see this investigation after investigation after investigation.
No, we do want to see people investigated if they've been criminal. Oh, that's what you said. That's right. The rising crime. Okay, we, and when I say we, just about everybody, I've got to think it's in the 90 percentile. We would like to see the crime prosecuted. That's what we, as Americans, do with the whole justice thing. I don't know. Maybe is there anybody out there who doesn't want to see crime prosecuted? Forgive me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I'm thinking it's above 90%. I could be wrong.
That we've seen for now over 6 years.
Yeah, there's no doubt that is a frustration for a lot.
Wait, what about the 6 years? What did she say was 6 years?
Want the focus to come back to them and the issues that matter in their lives, and they don't want to continue to see this investigation after investigation after investigation.
Oh, 6 years worth of investigation. Yeah, 2 of which he's already been found guilty of.
That we've seen.
And we're just getting going, folks.
For now over 6 years.
Yeah, there's no doubt that is a frustration for a lot of Republican and conservative voters out there who support the former president. But the reality is, Rana, that they're going to continue to see this play out, right? You've got the Georgia case, you've got the Jack Smith investigation.
Yes.
And so what I'm
which is multiple cases. 3, possibly 4.
Asking, as you look at politics and you look at these potential nominees, do you expect that there will be a negative impact of all of this process that's still to play out? Or do you think that it will not impact these numbers that have been very strong for the former president?
Well, we haven't seen an impact yet, but I think it's too soon to tell. Let's see what happens. Let's let the process play out as we have our primary process and our debate process. I think at the
Trump doesn't want to do the debates, by the way.
end of the day, the voters are going to vote based on issues and policies and what's happening to their lives. And I think they're a little numb to the fact that this has been 6 years of investigation after
They're just numb to all the crime. Yeah.
investigation, especially when we saw the Mueller investigation based on a fake dossier paid for by the DNC.
No. The dossier had no part whatsoever in the 400 pages of the Mueller report. Mueller was not even aware of the dossier. That is complete garbage. The dossier is mentioned one time in the Mueller report in all 400 pages, 398, 7, and that was by Trump in a tweet. But they looked at the dossier report and dismissed it. Dossier just means folder, by the way. The dossier report is it's a redundancy. Anyway, so that it was not based, absolutely not based on the dossier.
And Hillary Clinton, especially as those things have come to light. It's just been
No, they've come to light, and the dossier had nothing to do with it.
a lot of taxpayer money spent to attack Republicans. And I think people want to see our government work on behalf of them instead of how do we work to attack Republicans.
All right. Well, no doubt there are some other players here. Some of them are declared candidates already.
So the GOP doesn't want to spend taxpayer money to attack politicians, but the kids of politicians, that's fine, right? The family, like Hunter.
Nikki Haley has declared, Vivek Ramaswamy. Ron DeSantis is expected to put his hat in.
She's really trying to give Ronna an open door here. They're like, hey, there's other candidates you guys have. One of them now is been found liable of sexual assault, which is kind of bad. So would you like to talk about one of the other candidates, maybe?
In the race here. So let me ask you a quick question about that. There's a Politico headline today saying that Wall Street has soured on DeSantis as a Trump challenger, that he's a really weak option. He has gotten kind of beat up in the lead up to what we expect will be the announcement of his candidacy. What do you think about that, Ronna?
You know, I can't say anything. I have to stay neutral. I am Switzerland in this race. Obviously, the RNC has the intention of putting on a really great debate, which we're going to partner with Fox News on the first debate. We're obviously focusing on the primary process and getting the calendar in place with those states, the first states being Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina. But we're going to be neutral. We want to make sure that the voters have a chance to see our candidates. At the end of the day, though, this is what I know. We have to beat Joe Biden. We have to beat the Democrats, and we're going to have to come together around whoever the delegates and voters choose to be our nominee and make sure that we win the White House, take back the Senate, and keep the House in 2024.
All right. Ronna, thank you very much. I know we
Thank you.
brought you on for another topic, but obviously we've got breaking news, so we appreciate you jumping in there. Let's go back to constitutional attorney Jonathan Turley, George Washington law professor and Fox News contributor. It looks like the amount now is $5 million that
There you go.
would be coming to Eugene Carroll from the former president Donald Trump based on the combination of the battery charge, Jonathan, and the defamation charge. Your thoughts on that?
Well, that's actually a fairly consistent amount given what they found as to the violation and what they ultimately weighed in terms of damages. I think that...
So to update that, it was $2 million liability for the sexual assault, another $3 million for the defamation. That's Trump repeatedly insulting her and saying that she was a liar.
Looking at how this played out, a lot of it...
And he will continue to do that, by the way. As more and more truths, as they're called, according to the kids, as more and more of those come out, he will continue to attack Eugene Carroll, and she can go after him for more.
Is predictable. As we started out before the verdict, my biggest concern, if I was on the defense side, was that Trump didn't appear and they could draw a negative inference. And the fact that you had such a fast verdict seemed to reflect that. The problem going forward for Trump is that all of the factual parts of this verdict are iron-plated for appeal. When the Court of Appeals looks at it, they don't just judge the facts on their own. They look at whether the jury had any basis for these facts. Well, they had a lot of witnesses, a lot of evidence to base these numbers on and also to base their conclusions on. The only way for President Trump to try to reverse this is to argue that the trial was invalid because of the judge, because the judge allowed too much in. There's no question that the prejudicial impact of something like the access—
That's not going to fly with the appeal court.
Hollywood tape is overwhelming. And so if the Court of Appeals is allowed to look at something like that, did the court make the right decision? But in these cases, successful appeals are in the minority. When you have a trial of this length with this broad array of evidence, it's a tough appeal to make. And so we'll see how this unfolds.
I can't stop
But
it.
going forward, this is where law and politics collide. You know, his opponents will now argue that he was found guilty of battery as well as defamation.
Okay.
And that's going to be played out in the years to come. But, you know, the strange thing about all of this, Martha, and the strange things of the times we're living in, is that any other candidate faced with this type of verdict would likely never be seen again. But
okay, there we go. It took me so long to pause that I totally lost track of what I was going to say.
The fact is that Donald Trump has weathered these storms before. Our politics are so deeply divided and the separation is so complete that people remain in these sort of echo chambers. So I'm not too sure how this will play out politically, but legally, it's going to be difficult for the former president to make this cat walk backwards on an appeal to see if he can reverse what the jury has done here.
Yeah, there's still a lot to come here. We're waiting for the parties to walk out and make a statement. You see the microphones are at the ready in this New York courtroom, outside the New York courthouse, and we will certainly go to that when it gets underway. I wonder what your thoughts are on the president's representation, Jonathan. Joe Tacopina represented him in the Stormy Daniels case, and now again in this case. One of the things he argued was that Ms. Carroll's memory of this incident was not accurate, that she couldn't remember exactly when it happened, and that he claimed that she lifted the storyline from an episode of Law and Order. So your thoughts, as he is now on his second case that has not gone the former president's way, Jonathan?
Well, Tacopina is an experienced trial attorney, and this is a fairly conventional defense. I mean, there's no way to defend Donald Trump without attacking the memory and the veracity.
Well, I mean, there's just no way to defend Donald Trump, but go on.
Of the witness. But he had to do it alone. He didn't have his client with him. And so, you know, it was very interesting. The first clip you showed where Donald Trump said, you know, just anyone who knows the store, it's implausible that I or anyone.
Well, there's checkout counters, so
Anyone else would have done that. That's a perfectly plausible defense he could have made on the stand. But in the rest of the deposition, he made statements that furthered the narrative of the plaintiff, and I'm sure played badly to this jury.
Everyone's running out of the building behind them. I don't know what's going on, but suddenly people are fleeing.
So I'm not too sure you could blame this on the attorney. He had a limited range of movement because he didn't have the option to have the client there. The other thing is that not having your client in the courtroom can be viewed as something of an affront to the jury, because you're asking the jury to really go to bat for your client. You know, even though they can raise a negative inference, you need to care about my client and his rights. When the client doesn't show up in the courtroom, the jury can sort of shrug and say, well, he didn't seem to care enough to be here. And that's part of the dynamic you wrestle with as an attorney, of how those optics will play with the jury.
One of the other things that the former president stressed in his defense was that she wasn't his type, that he would not have been attracted to her. And you can imagine where that might not go over. Oh, here she's coming out now. Let's see if she stops at these microphones. But here's E. Jean Carroll. She is with her attorneys as she walks out of this courtroom. It looks like they went right by the microphones. No comment from them at this point. We'll see if somebody catches up with her as she moves out of here. But clearly she feels vindicated.
I would think so, but we shouldn't assume that. Does anybody know if she's still married to John Johnson?
And happy, at least most of the charges that she brought forward here. She is now going to receive $5 million on, Jonathan, as we watch this live.
Yeah, and she obviously has reason to feel vindicated. I mean, the jury made a split decision to some extent by rejecting the rape count, but you can almost see the logic of the jury on this jury form. You know, they didn't feel they had enough to find that more serious claim. But they were allowed to have negative inferences against Donald Trump because he didn't appear. And the judge allowed a very wide array of testimony.
You can do that in a civil court. In a criminal court, you're not allowed to have negative inferences. You're allowed to have negative influences. That's fine.
More than I think some would be comfortable with. I mean, he did allow women to come in and say he did the same to me. He did allow the access Hollywood tape to play. And then, of course, Donald Trump's own depositions undermined the defense to some extent. So for the jury's perspective, I think that they thought that they were going down the middle here in terms of rejecting the more serious count, but accepting that a battery occurred. Once they accepted battery occurred, it was likely inevitable that they would find defamation. Even though that's a different standard, you have to find that this was malicious, intentional. Once they found that battery occurred, what they had found is that Donald Trump went into that room in a
I wonder who's going to speak at the microphones. OAN had a microphone sitting there.
Department store and did these egregious things. And from their perspective, if you believe that, it's hard to believe that you wouldn't have remembered that occurring. And so the standard for defamation becomes much easier for them.
Yeah. Jonathan, stand by if you would. Let's bring back in Andy McCarthy, former federal prosecutor, contributing editor of the National Review, and a Fox News contributor.
Hold on. We're jumping ahead here because it's just going to be the same nonsense.
No idea who this woman is. All in caps. This verdict is a disgrace.
Right. So here it is, all in caps.
It's a continuation of the greatest witch hunt of all time. And Andy, I was just asking you sort of the big picture here, because there are, we see it in the polls, there are a lot of people who have watched this presidency and believe that he has been under constant attack. And for many of them, they will say this is just another example of that.
Oh, I didn't do that. I haven't clicked it. It's frozen. Come on. Come on. Don't do this. Not right now.
Yeah, I think the problem with that, Martha, and you may be right. Maybe that'll be the conclusion. I suspect the conclusion instead for a lot of people will be that a witch hunt is a sort of an obsession that you go on forever in an investigative fashion, chasing after a case that doesn't really exist. Mm-hmm. Whereas in this instance, people brought forward evidence and it was presented to a jury, not to a panel of Democrats. And they've unanimously found that he's liable. And I think, again, they did it in a discriminating way. So
not a witch hunt. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my wife.
Which one are you
this is what I wanted to talk about.
Here.
Hold on. Okay, here we go. Go ahead.
Oh, is that?
The person you just pointed to was E. Jean Carroll.
Who is that? Who is this?
Point. Your wife.
Okay. This back up properly.
Have been attracted to her. Watch this.
Yeah, so Trump claimed to The Hill, the newspaper, not the newspaper, but the news organization, The Hill, back in 2019, that he had no idea of who this woman was. And he was shown this photo, which shows him meeting E. Jean Carroll, apparently in some kind of receiving line. She's there with her husband. He's there with his wife at the time, Ivana. And she's there with John Johnson, her husband. I remember his name because, come on, John Johnson. And then tells the Hill people and I mean this respectfully, she's not my type. And then in this, well, we'll see what happens here.
You say Marla's in this photo?
That's Marla. Yeah, that's my wife.
Which woman?
At this time, that was not his wife. His wife was also standing next to him, but he still identifies E. Jean Carroll, the victim, as his wife, even though he had said, not my type. By the way, before this clip that we see in the deposition, that's exactly what they talked about. And they talked about not only you told The Hill back in 2019 that she is not your type. They talked about this particular photograph, said, we're going to label this Exhibit DJT 28, and handed it to him. He knew exactly, well, sorry, he didn't know because he's an idiot. Anybody with any brains would have said, oh, we just talked about this photograph for a minute. She said, I'm going to label it DJT 28, and handed it to him. For some reason, he thinks that Marla Maples in that picture. And I'll tell you that reason.
Are you pointing to?
No.
Here.
Carroll.
Oh, is that?
The person you just pointed to was
I
E. Jean
see.
Carroll.
Who is that? Who is this?
Who's that? Who's this? He's saying, that's his wife, Ivana.
Your wife.
Is your wife. Like, I don't know if that's legal counsel on his side or opposing counsel for this deposition. Just the way they immediately start saying, that's your wife, Grandpa. And they say that Joe they say that Biden has cognition issues. Who's this? Who's this? That's your wife, sir. That's your wife.
And the woman on the right is your then wife,
I don't know.
Ivana?
This was the picture. I assume that's John Johnson. Is that
That's Carroll.
Because it's very blurry.
It's not blurry. It's crystal clear. And I'll show you the picture. You judge for yourself. Again, this is over the internets. Right here. There's the picture. That is not blurry at all. Let's zoom in. Not blurry. That's her face right there. That is E. Jean Carroll. Quite a looker, but apparently not his type. But such a looker that he mistakes her for Marla Maples. Why? Because it's very blurry. Here's what I haven't seen anybody comment on. This is Trump's downfall more than anything else. Like every Greek tragedy, he slept with his mother. No, that's not it. Hubris. Hubris. That's his wife over here, by the way. That's Ivana. I think. I don't know. I've never followed the whole Trump saga in terms of who he was married to whom he was married and when. So anyway, that's John Johnson, though. Which, by the way, in the deposition, Trump recognizes him. But he was a reporter or a news anchor on ABC or NBC or whatever it was. I don't know if he's still alive or around. But anyway, they're not married anymore. That's why I was asking, although that didn't. Who had which kids, Stephanie? Well, I know that Ivana had Ivanka. And they did that weird name thing. Again, that has to do with narcissism and hubris. It's his narcissism that makes him mistake E. Jean Carroll for his future wife, Marla Maples. What is very rarely commented on, but is a known fact, is that Trump needs readers. In fact, there was a couple of times, I want to say maybe 3 times, during the first campaign in 2016, where you actually saw Trump in his readers. He would read The Snake. I think I have it. Not my type. Says, yeah, right here. Look at this. This is Trump wearing his readers.
Along the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor, half-frozen snake.
Yeah, so he would read the song, The Snake, and also misattribute the songwriter every time. So he's wearing glasses in this. He wears readers. He has to wear readers. His vision is not great whatsoever. But you never see him wearing his readers. He stopped wearing it because at some point someone said it made him look weak. So he stopped wearing them. And Every once in a while, you see a picture of him at the Resolute desk and you see his readers in the background, but he wouldn't let photographers take pictures of him with his readers on because it made him look weak. Like me, see? That's incredibly weak. Look at me. But because he wasn't wearing his readers, the jury saw him admit that he said that she's not my type and then identify her as his wife. All because of his narcissism. Again, this is a, 89-year-old who wears makeup and still dyes his hair. Oh, dear. Just so much. And then, of course, at the end, we know that that's the reason because he says, if the picture's very blurry. That's the problem. The picture's blurry. It's not the fact that I'm refusing to put on my readers because there's a camera here in the deposition room.
Your thoughts on that, Andy, as it might have been interpreted by this jury?
Well, I think the context for this, Martha, is that he said she wasn't his type. So, the last person you would want to confuse her with would be someone you married.
Someone you had children with.
Yes. I just got some more information in my ear here. The Trump campaign coming in saying that this verdict will be appealed.
Yeah, we know.
And we know that the former president said earlier that he would appeal on unconstitutional silencing. Andy, what's the impact of the fact that this happens and also other cases are in the pipeline while he is a current candidate for the presidency of the United States and a fairly the strongest one on his side of the aisle right now?
Yeah, I don't think, Martha, that we can say exactly how devastating this is because nothing like this has ever happened before.
Yes.
My own view of this, for what it's worth, has been that there would be a steady attrition of support over time from former President Trump simply because we don't know what the bottom of his potential liability is because new things continue to pop up. Other cases continue to pop up.
Yep.
It escaped my attention, for example, until a couple of days ago, that they've actually scheduled for October 3rd the trial in New York of the civil fraud case that Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York State, brought.
Yep.
So, we're all focused.
He's already been found guilty. Sorry, his business, the Trump Organization, has already been found guilty on 9 counts.
Focused on the potential criminal liability and the possibility the special counsel will bring charges.
It'll erode. There will be attrition from his support until we get to 32%. That's where MAGA is, and that's where the idiots are. They will not change.
The New York Manhattan District Attorney has already brought charges. There's a question about whether they'll bring charges in Fulton County. But then, staring right in front of us is this trial that's already been scheduled for October, which is a fairly key period of time when the primaries and the debates have gotten rolling. So I just think at a certain point, people are going to say that it's too much. It doesn't mean that you don't like President Trump or you don't think he was a good president.
Well, he wasn't, and I don't.
It's simply that to roll the dice on nominating somebody with these kinds of difficulties and baggage, I just can't see it.
Yeah, MAGA doesn't care.
For those who are watching this, Andy.
By the way, if things start to fall apart, he'll run as a third party. He'll just tear the end of the Republican Party out of its butt. I meant to say that more eloquently. I don't think that I can.
And they say, how could this be brought now? This is something that happened in the mid-90s. It's a really long time ago, over 20-something years ago. Explain to them why there's no statute of limitations on this or it was extended.
Yeah, it's a 2-track process. So the way she got in the door in the first place was to claim defamation. She told her story about this thing that happened 20 plus years ago. She was out of time at that point to bring any kind of a sexual battery case. But when Trump reacted the way he reacted to what she wrote, she brought a defamation case, which naturally made it that she would have to prove the rape or sexual battery in the trial. And then in response to the Me Too era, the New York legislature last year opened a 1-year window where time-barred sexual abuse claims could be filed again. I think it went from November 24th or so of last year to November 20th.
Yeah, we talked about that already. All right, let's head to the hour. They'll have had time to frame it in a Fox News way. Now, Fox News, after the election, after January 6th of 2021, they started going in the direction of Ron DeSantis for a little while there. Let's see what happens at the top of the next hour. Yeah, so it should automatically pay for. We'll see what happens here.
Fox on top of two big stories we are following.
Unfortunately, it's Neil Cavuto, and he is fairly fair and balanced. And he's not going to read the propaganda. More, I think the 5 comes up after this or something. What time is it? 1 o'clock, 1:32. The 5 might be at 2 o'clock Pacific time, 5 o'clock Eastern. I'm not even really sure of the schedule. I could look, but I really don't care. But to see how they frame it, Trump not guilty of rape. Trump beat the system.
Right now to the left.
What will Tucker say? Nothing. Tucker will say nothing. That is absolutely right, Stephanie.
To your screen in Washington, the White House, those debt talks just starting. We are watching. On the right of your screen, first, our other big story today, a jury finding former President Donald Trump liable for battery in an alleged 1996 attack on writer E. Jean Carroll. Carroll had accused Mr. Trump of sexually assaulting her during a chance encounter at a Manhattan department store. The jury's findings are civil, not criminal. So to be clear, the former president has not been convicted of any crime and doesn't face any prison time. Nor has the jury found him guilty of raping Ms. Carroll, but again found that he sexually abused and defamed her. And for that, the jury has ordered Mr. Trump to pay $5 million in damages. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto. We're going to take you through these two stories and indeed how they link up in a political sense a little bit later this hour. Let's first get the latest on this E. Jean Carroll case. Brian Yanis in New York with the latest. Brian.
Neil, good afternoon. In less than 3 hours, this jury unanimously came to their decision. Remarkably quick, considering that they were considering 10 different questions on this issue of whether or not former President Trump was liable in battery and defamation. This jury unanimously found that former President Trump is liable of battery, more specifically of sexually abusing and forcibly touching E. Jean Carroll in that New York City department store in 1996. They also found him liable for defamation, finding that he maliciously smeared Carroll's reputation that did harm to her professionally and personally, and they have asked the court to award Carroll with $5 million in damages. The jury did not find Trump liable, though, for rape, which was the central claim and the most serious claim from Carroll. And Carroll did not address the media. She walked out of court, though, smiling after the verdict was read. Her attorney, Roberta Kaplan, said off camera that she's, quote, very happy. And just moments ago, in an interview with Fox News, former President Trump told Fox News Digital that he will appeal this decision. And in a post on Truth Social, he wrote this, quote, I have absolutely no idea who this woman is. This verdict is a disgrace, a continuation of the greatest witch hunt of all time. This was a civil case, which means the burden of proof was lower than in a criminal case. Carroll did not have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this happened to her, only that it was more likely than not that it did. And Carroll says in a chance encounter at Bergdorf Goodman in 1996, Trump asked her for help to buy a gift for a woman. She voluntarily went into the dressing room on the 6th floor where she testified Trump raped her, using her shoulder to pin her down and raping her before he kneed him to get away. Again, this jury found unanimously that the sexual assault and forcibly touching happened, but they did not go far enough to say that she was raped. And Carroll's attorneys made the argument, particularly in closing arguments, Neil, really on the fact that former President Trump did not testify in this case, and no witnesses on his behalf testified on this case. That was a point that was made and hammered home.
Wonder how Melania feels about all of this. Oh, she probably buys the whole witch hunt thing. She's just waiting for the inevitable death of Trump, so she can get some of that money. It'll be $5 million less money now. All right, kids, it's been over an hour. I got a bunch of stuff to do today. So tomorrow I will be flying back to Seattle if I to Seattle. I'm in Seattle at the Rusty Bed Studios. I will be flying back to Los Angeles. If I get there in time, we will be doing the 5 o'clock showing of the Trump interview. I'm going to be watching it one way or another. So if it doesn't start at 5 o'clock, if I'm not back in town, if I'm delayed, like I was delayed on the way up here, then I will get to it when I get back. So keep your eye on that. Thanks for watching. Everybody, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and most importantly, don't rape people in department stores.